been down to Fort Myers and seen the Ford Edison thing? Well, several of you. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's actually an interesting kind of a field trip kind of a day. I've been there twice. When I have out-of-state visitors, it's always kind of a cool thing to go down there and see. And I think these two men led really fascinating lives. And actually, Edison gets my attention even more. And as an inventor and a scientist, he's just a really, really interesting man. And not too long ago, I read that he had this interesting way of deciding who he hired as employees. So I learned that Edison liked to be personally involved in the hiring of members onto his research jobs and his research team, his labs. And he wanted to personally vet them, the candidates. And his favorite way of doing that was he would invite the candidate out to lunch, and then he would order soup for the table. And he kind of put the applicant on the spot to reveal their true colors, but they had no idea. So Edison would watch them as they ate the soup. And the reason for this soup test was that this famous inventor wanted to see if the applicants added salt and pepper to the soup before they tasted it. And Edison immediately rejected people who prematurely seasoned their soup. He reasoned that he did not want employees who relied on assumptions, because in his opinion, those that were content to abide by their own preconceived notions have no place in his business, because the absence of curiosity and willingness to ask questions were antithetical to his innovative ways, right? So if we're going to be seriously considering making some new choices in our lives, some new decisions, we got to challenge what we've already decided to be true in life. Interesting. So country music artist Ashley Cook has a song on the radio right now that I want to read a lot of the lyrics up to you. And what I will say is that this song is actually, in all fairness, talking about how she allowed her life to change because of a love that she found. And she's singing about a person, I have no doubt. But I invite you in this setting to imagine that she's singing about finding her own soul, that she's singing about the spirit that she encountered pretty unexpectedly, which is what happens to all of us at some point, doesn't it? So here are the lyrics. I'm a picture-perfect painting of imperfection. I'm a walking definition of unsettled and restless. The needle in my compass points anywhere but home. I thought I'd always be alone because I never wanted to tap my brakes. I never wanted to settle down. I was always 1 foot out the door. I never thought about turning around. I never saw myself with a white picket fence dug into the ground, never till now. Out of all the prayers I've prayed, this is heaven's answer. Out of all the hell I've been through, I never thought you'd be out there, but thank God you were right there. You're going to have to be creative with these lyrics. Never till you walked into that bar. Never till I walked into a center where I could encounter love. Never till we talked over that song. Never till Derek sang that song. Never till we danced till closing time. That's a whole Be Kind image for me. Never till you proved me wrong about the kind of love you fall so hard you never hit the ground. So how many of you can think back on that experience in your life where you felt the energy of love so strongly that you became a different version of yourself? Suddenly, because of love, things you said you would never do, things you insisted you didn't want to do, you were perhaps suddenly open to doing. That's what love does. And I'm not talking about the love of another person, although I see people elbowing each other. Which I think is so sweet. If I was sitting next to Terry, I'd probably elbow her. But anyway, I'm not talking about the love of another person. I'm talking today about the experience we have when we run smack into the love of God itself. And we find it where? Right here, smack dab in the middle of our very own being. God is love. And when you get that, you'll begin to understand that when you have an experience of love, you have an experience of God. When you encounter the love that God is, when you start to have an intense relationship with it, suddenly possibilities begin appearing in your field of experience. Am I right?
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
This month, we're talking about new beginnings, allowing our lives to head in a new direction, opening ourselves up to a fresh road stretching out before us. And my talk title today is Now I Choose. So here's the deal. We've had life up until this moment we're sharing right now in this room. Each and every one of us has walked a very twisty, turny road that led us to this time and place. Each and every one of us have experienced hard things along the way. If you haven't experienced anything hard, you can leave this lesson. Because we've all had challenging relationships. We've all had tough situations, hard circumstances, things we try to forget, but things that have caused us to say never again about lots of stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I don't know what your list of never agains is, but I talk to a lot of people. I have a lot of clients. I talk to people, and here's what I hear, things people say. I will never date again. I will never go back to school. I will never recover from this. I will never be happy again. I will never leave this place, this relationship, this job, or whatever. I will never. I hear people say, I don't like this, so I don't do that. Clients have said to me, I can't forgive this thing. And because of that, I don't blah, 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 blah. Because of this, I don't that. Because I had this experience, I will never do that. And on the flip side, I hear people say things that start with the words always. I always go this way. I always do it this way. I always have this happen to me. I always do this, so I can't do that. Right? The theme of the month is never have I ever done it like this, or whatever that, I don't even know how to say. I don't say things like that. I don't know. But those declarations of I always do this and I never do that, they back us into a corner with very few roads to choose out of the place that you're sitting in. And the point is, we just don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be disappointed. Again, we don't want to lose. Basically, we've stopped trusting life, and we've decided we aren't strong enough, good enough, smart enough, or brave enough to try something new. And when I hear folks have this idea of resignation about life, what I realize is that they're relying on their own humanness to pull themselves out of it all. And quite frankly, if all you have is your own ego strength, your own willpower, your own courage, choosing something new and different probably does seem overwhelming. A grand rising as a human ego is not always so grand. But remember our song at the beginning, never till now, never till now, never till love showed up, never till I realized I'm a spiritual being connected to the power of the whole universe, the source of life, the intelligence that creates everything, the thing that I call God. Never till I knew that. Never till when? Never till now. And now I choose. Now I choose life in a new way. Now I choose to look at all of the possibilities open to me. But if I'm going to be in the now, I have to realize that the past and everything that happened or didn't happen is gone. The past has only as much power as I give it today. It doesn't exist anywhere except in our thoughts and in our stories. That's the only place it exists. Think about it. It's gone. And one of the things that egos do, we all have one of the things they do is they catalog our experiences. Our minds categorize everything. Oh, this thing hurts, this thing is good, this thing is bad, this thing is easy, hard, painful, joyful, whatever. We categorize everything. Repeat this, don't repeat that. The whole ego motivation is what? Survival. Survival. Survival is good. Survival's good. Fabulous, actually. But all these decisions that the ego makes has us backed into that corner I mentioned. Because see what our egos would do? If you gave them control, they would wrap you in cotton fluff and they'd put you in your safe room in your house and lock the door and say, you're not going anywhere. Living is painful, people. Stay safe. Don't do it. Don't do it. And if we aren't careful, we create a routine in our lives that keeps us in a groove that is pretty safe, doing the same thing day after day. This is my routine. I don't get hurt in this routine. I don't take risks in this routine. I just exist. And there's an author named Ellen Glasgow, and she once said, the only difference between a rut and a grave are the dimensions. The only difference between a rut and a grave are the dimensions, kind of the length of it, right? But if we challenge our egoic interpretation of our lives, we can get out of a rut. Because here's the thing. We are hardwired. I say this on a regular basis, but I'll say it again today. One of my key messages. You're hardwired to make the very best choice you can make. Hardwired. Nobody intentionally messes things up. I almost said the word. We don't intentionally mess things up. Given the information we had, given the level of awareness we're existing in, given everything we knew, we made our choices. We gave it our best shot. And then we decided that we had already figured out the way life works and we just stick with it. We live the life we've lived up until now. Up until now. But now what? Now you have more information. Now you have a greater awareness of your spiritual identity and the power that breathes in, as, and through you. Now you know more. Now you're surrounded by a community of cheerleaders, of people that help you learn, help you anchor your spiritual identity. This community knows for you what you cannot know for yourself. So if not now, when? If now is not the time for new stuff in your life, when? When is? It's truly time to acknowledge everything about the past, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Acknowledge it and then disentangle ourselves from it so that we're free to follow the love of God that leads us into newness. Instead of facing the past and making our decisions based on the things we learned back there, weighing out what happened back then, what happened, what. It's time to turn and face this brand new future and go out and meet a life that's centered in love and light. You know, I always look for, where's the wisdom here? Where can I find wisdom? And so I wanted to talk about the Buddhist tradition for a minute, for some inspiration. And I want to remind us of the Four Noble Truths, okay? I paraphrase here wildly, okay? So the first truth is that life will include suffering. The second truth is that the cause of suffering is attachment. The third truth is that suffering is optional because we can release attachment. And the fourth truth is that there's a road to walk that takes you away from suffering and attachment through spiritual practice and awareness. So how do those four noble truths of the Buddhist tradition help us today with this topic of choosing a new way of living? So I think we can all agree that we've had some suffering in our past. If not, again, you're done. That's the first truth. Life will include suffering, but let's look at the second and third truths, okay? The cause of suffering is attachment. Attachment. And the third one is we can end the suffering by releasing the attachment. What do I mean by attachment, and how do I release it, Laine? I don't know what you're talking about. Attachment means that I have preferences. And there's a certain way that I would like things to go. And if you look at your past, you're going to be able to identify where your preferences did not quite play out in your experiences. Your preference was that the relationship didn't end. Your preference was that the house did not burn down. Your preference was that the person did not die. Your preference was that your body did not respond to the substance the way it responded and you had an addiction issue. Your preference was that the person treated you with more respect, and the list could go on. Whatever your preference was, that it didn't quite turn out that way, that's the attachment. And when we continue to hold on to the interpretation of our life that not getting our preferences ruined everything, we're stuck in the suffering. That's our story. I'm sticking with it. That's suffering. We're dragging around this big old baggage of preferences not happening and injuries and all those things, retelling the stories and declaring that we will never do this or never do that again. And that declaration tosses our suffering into the future, deciding in advance that the soup does not have salt and pepper. Deciding in advance that I won't trust again, I won't allow again, I won't love again. And it's just like adding the salt and pepper before you've even tasted the soup. It's deciding this relationship is going to be just like that one. Oh, why bother? Why bother? The only way out is to release it. That's the third noble truth. Forgive it and release it. My definition of forgiveness, one more time, is accepting that the past could not and should not have been different. Never till now could you do that. Never till now could you choose to forgive and turn to face the future. Never till now, never till you met the love of God dwelling in your heart and soul. Now is the time to embrace the third noble truth and stop your suffering. Because today's talk is really about the fourth noble truth. There's a path of spiritual practice that you can take to freedom, love, joy, and every good thing. Now I choose that. Now I choose that. Ernest Holmes declared in the Science of Mind textbook, he said this: as we have proven that principle is not bound by precedent, we go into that realm which says, behold, I make all things new, not carrying with us the limited belief of the reason why it cannot be. What he's saying is that when we're living as this philosophy teaches us to live, we are not bound by the choices that we made in the past. We're not stuck in circumstances being held in place by patterns of decisions that can be changed now. We're never defined by who we thought we were yesterday or by definitions that other people placed on us, unless we are currently agreeing with them. Period. So the question is, what do you choose now? How can spirituality help you walk toward that choice and let that baggage of suffering go? Do you have the intention to leave it behind? That's the question. Because first, you got to remind yourself of your intention to have that grand rising. What that means is rising into a brighter light, into greater love, into bigger peace, a more constant level of joy. Basically, set an intention to walk into a future living the aspects of God as you are. So choose an issue. Choose something in your life that you would like to have a grand rising in. You got it? Can you think of one thing? One thing you'd like to have a grand rising in. You're not denying the reality of how it is right now. You're not. But you can turn your attention away from how it is right now towards that which you do prefer, you do intend, you do want to experience. And you begin to think about and imagine and talk with other people about the area of your life that you intend to rise in. Ask others here to know this greater possibility for you. Talk to your practitioner or turn in a prayer request on the little card. They're right there. Say, I'm having a grand rising in this. Know this with me. Because the spiritual team can know this with you. ask around. People have done it and it works. Prayer works, right? So make room for it in your life. Make room for something bigger in your life by releasing your attachment to whatever it is that keeps you small, whatever it is that makes you suffer. Perhaps your life is not ready for this new thing that you want. You've got to prepare it. Think about what you're doing on a regular basis that blocks you from having this new rising moment. So in classes, sometimes I ask everybody to write down one thing that you really, really want. And they write it down. And as you can imagine, they write down things that you would probably write down, like, I would like a new job. I would like a different living situation. I would like more travel, a new boyfriend. Yummy things that we all wish for, and we write them down. This is what I want. And then guess what it is that I say next? No, you don't. Mm-hmm. You don't want that thing. And and they're like, oh, but I do. No, you don't. Because I go on to say, you don't really want that because you don't have it. And eventually the lesson goes on a little bit. Now you're going to have a cheat sheet for the next class. The lesson goes on to have the students exploring, what do they really want more than they want this thing that they wrote down? And the person who said, I want a new job, they're going to realize, well, what I really want is to stay in my routine, and I don't want to move to a new city, and I want stability more than I want a new job. The person that said they wanted to travel, they really wanted what they wanted more than that was to stay safe and predictable, and they didn't want to do the research it would take to do the travel and all of that. They wanted money in their savings account more than they wanted the trip. The barriers to having what they wanted were more in their control than they realized. That's the lesson in the class. But a bigger lesson in that exercise is this. When you figure out what that thing that you wrote down that you want symbolizes, you're often wanting something that is already yours, already available to all. For example, if you want a new boyfriend, what you really want is love and emotional support. Let's just say that. When you travel, what you really want is adventure and newness and learning or whatever. When you want a new living situation, what you really want is safety and comfort. And these things, love, growth, safety, comfort, all that already exists inside of you. That's a symbol of it. Never till now did you know that life with a capital L loves and supports you. And when you choose to live out loud as a spiritual being, life energy swirls around that decision. When you live as a loving person, love swirls around you. When you live as a generous person, generosity just shows up all around you. When you give off light, light shines back on you. It's time. Now is the time. So I want to close back. I want to close back with our song, Never Till Now, but now I choose. Now I choose to settle down into the grace of the divine. Now I choose to release anything that holds me to my past. Now I choose to embrace a love that holds me so hard I never hit the ground. Nice song, Ashley Cook. Yeah. Will you join me in prayer? Here is what I know. What I know is that spirit is not bound by yesterday. What I know, and I know for each and every person hearing this, is that spirit embraces life. It surges energy behind a decision of love, a decision of peace, a decision of harmony and connection. And what I know, that the road rises to meet those of us who take a step. Take a step in a new direction. Take a step towards more wholeness, towards more love, towards more forgiveness, towards more grace. And Spirit's right there. The road does rise to meet us. And I know that whatever you are seeking is seeking you. And now I choose. Now I choose, and I gratefully release my word into the law, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
And so it is. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.